Hello and welcome to this week's News Desk with Chris Stafford and Nancy Gillen. And this is Season 4, Episode 21. We're recording on Wednesday, June the 8th. And Nancy, we talked about this before we hit record here, that we thought this would be a pretty quiet week in the world of women's sports, with the French Open now over and Wimbledon not starting until the end of the month, and not much going on, of course, in the football world. But we've managed to gather quite a few stories, haven't we?
Yeah, like you said, it was pretty quiet, kind of a go-between of a very busy summer for women's sport. But yeah, we're kind of like in the calm before the storm at the moment. But yeah, still a lot going on behind the scenes and around the world as well. So yeah, kind of more stories than ever.
Yeah, and of course we've just, as I said, had the French Open at Roland Garros, and no surprises there. Good job you didn't lose any money on that. You know, there was no one else to back, was there, except Iga Swiatek to win that.
Yeah, I think everyone expected it. I think it was actually quite surprising. I think most people expected her to win without dropping a set, and I think she did drop one set.
One, didn't she? The whole fortnight, yeah.
Yeah, but the fact that people thought she was going to kind of just go through the whole tournament without dropping a set showed how dominant she is at the moment. And yeah, it wasn't really in any doubt at all. Even in the final against Coco Gauff, she got a very dominant win, 1 in 2 sets. Fairly simple routine match for her. So she is, her 35th consecutive win. Yeah. That's now surpassed the record. Serena Williams' her longest winning streak, and it's now equaled Venus Williams. It's still a way off. I think it's Navratilova who has the absolute highest winning streak. It's something like 70 games or something, 70 matches or something like that. But yeah, it kind of among her contemporaries, Swiatek is now really establishing herself as one of the very best. So yeah, it's pretty impressive. And I do think maybe now we're coming towards the end of that winning streak, just because we're going onto grass court. That's maybe not where she's strongest, but you never know. She could still, you do have to kind of ask, like, who can beat her at the moment.
Well, I think that's the point, isn't it? Whether it's her chosen surface or not, because she's on such great form, and she's got that kind of consistency. She's on a roll. She's got the confidence. She's got the fitness and the strength right now. I mean, that's, a big part of it, that she, may just dismiss any naysayers that think the surface isn't for her because of all those other factors.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I think, another big factor is the retirement of Ashley Barty you'd probably say is the kind of the person that probably could have beaten her or could have given a bit of opposition to the dominance. And she's gone. So I'm interested to see, I think, how it plays out on clay court. I don't think Swiatek is actually going to feature at any of the little tournaments happening in England before. I think she's going straight in for Wimbledon. So that would kind of be the first opportunity we get to see of her, and to see whether she can continue this streak.
Yeah, I guess she's preserving herself carefully, right? With that kind of form, there's going to be tournaments that she doesn't need to play, like Nottingham or Birmingham or Eastbourne in the run-up. So you won't get an idea of how that grass feels under her feet before we get to SW18, sorry. 18 or 19? It's been a long time since I've been there.
Yeah, I don't know, actually. I don't want to say one when it's the other.
All right, there's your quiz question for the week, Nancy. I'm sure you'll resolve it by the end of the show here. Good luck to her. We will be following the Wimbledon tournament, which starts June 27th through July 10th. Now, there's one young lady we're a little bit concerned about whether she'll be fit for Wimbledon, and that's the British player, of course, who won the US Open last fall, Emma Raducanu, who suffered another injury at Nottingham this week. Nancy, there's talk about, she not having the team behind her that she needs for this level of on the first year on tour.
Yeah, well, it's quite interesting what's been happening with the coaches, and that she seems to be kind of like testing things out. And I read one article a few weeks ago where it was kind of saying, like, I think it's her and her father are kind of, the decision makers, and they kind of use one coach and then they get all the information they possibly can from them, and then get another coach and get all the info, gathering all this information from different people, and they're just moving on quite quickly. But yeah, as we've seen with the coaches, she hasn't had a kind of someone that's been a constant with her since she won the US Open. And yeah, I mean, obviously her form has been very turbulent. Like, we've seen tiny glimpses of what she did at the US Open last year, but injury has really definitely kind of hampered her season so far. And yeah, another one at the Nottingham Open. I think she has said that she is probably going to play Wimbledon, but she's dropped out of Birmingham, which is next week. And then I think Eastbourne and Wimbledon, she's looking likely to be able to do that. But again, she's just not been able to get like that run of form, that run of matches under her belt to kind of build up form and go from there. It's been very stunted, basically every tournament that she's played at. And yeah, like you said, whether, she needs people around her to kind of advise, like, should she, I suppose, how she's playing and stuff, the ways to prevent injury and things like that. But yeah, potentially maybe she needs someone that's more of a constant in her coaching team.
Yeah, obviously she's got to get that right. It takes a bit of tweaking, doesn't it? Especially with this being the first year on the tour. And we have to remember she's still a teenager, so there's a lot of, tweaking and get it right for her and Brigham. But it just seems extraordinary. She's having such bad luck, such a bad run of injuries, and she doesn't want to be labelled to be injury prone, does she? That's for sure, especially this time in her career. But the one thing that struck me, there was the article on CNN about her injury. They immediately connected it with Alexander Zverev, of course, who had that injury at Roland Garros, and he's out for a while now with 3 torn ligaments. It was a terrible accident, but it's almost as if they couldn't run that story without mentioning a man and a player who's also injured, a male player. Did you notice that?
Yeah, that's very true, actually. It's kind of a weird link, isn't it? Because
right, there was two sentences about Emma, and then they went straight into Alexander's injury.
Yeah, and they play on different tours. They're, completely different in different competitions, essentially. And why not just do it as 2 separate articles? Yeah, that is strange.
Yeah. I have noticed there's a shocking new story come out about the British player, another British player, Tara Moore. She's been provisionally suspended from because she tested positive, and she says she's never knowingly taken a banned substance. But did you read that? She played at the French Open. She was in the doubles event, but according to the tennis anti-doping program, she took some prohibited substances, which have cost her the chance to play on the WTA tour for future tournaments indefinitely. That's the young 29-year-old British tennis star. Did you read that story?
No, I haven't actually seen that. I need to look into that. But indefinitely, is she waiting like a hearing or something like that? Yeah,
well, according to the reports, she provided a sample in April while she was playing in Colombia. And that was, the split sample A and B, and made the analysis. And then the A sample contained some prohibited substances. And, so it has to go through the tennis anti-doping program protocols. But she's obviously denying it. She said she's never knowingly taken any banned substance. So she's surprised as anybody that she tested positive. So, yeah, provisionally suspended. So, we'll follow that story and keep you posted. I want to come back to another tennis story that came out of the French Open, Nancy, and that's about a Chinese teenager who lost her dreams when a dream of playing again, to Iga Swiatek because of menstrual cramps. She came out, openly to talk about that she was hampered by that. Did you see that story?
I did, yeah. And when I mentioned earlier about the set being dropped, Swiatek dropping a set, it was against, Seng Chin-wen, the Chinese tennis player. She had actually won the first set against Swiatek, which is a massive achievement, really, considering the fact that no one's really done that no one's done that really since the start of the year. But yeah, like you said, she then started suffering from menstrual cramps and had to basically, she played the rest of the game, but she lost 6-love, 6-2. So as you know, obviously couldn't put up much of a fight at all. Then afterwards she talked about it, which I think is great. I think it's good that, athletes are being open about it, that it is something that affects their game. And I saw like a lot of conversation happening afterwards about it. And, I think there was a lot of people saying, when we have the debate about tennis players getting time out and toilet breaks and all of that for a lot of the female players, there is actually like quite a legitimate reason why they might need to go to the toilet. Just kind of sparked a whole conversation. And she just kind of said that, I think she said, I wish I can be a man on court.
Yes.
So obviously he didn't, kind of wish that she could be playing, I suppose, without that hindrance. And, it is a once a month. So that is going to pop up during tournaments quite a lot. And she, won a set against the world number one and the eventual winner. And it must be incredibly frustrating to be at that stage and then just be hindered by, something that you can't control at all. No. So, but yeah, fair play to her for speaking openly about that, because it's definitely an important conversation that needs to be had.
And as per our previous topic, there's a limit to what they can take in terms of pain control during a tournament.
Yeah, that's another interesting kind of aspect to it. Like you said, I think they can take painkillers or something, but yeah, that's very limited. And then I know there's like higher strength painkillers that non-athletes can take. I don't think athletes can take them. So you're incredibly limited to how how you deal with that. It's obviously very challenging and can be really debilitating for athletes if they're trying to, play elite sport. I think a lot of people have menstrual cramps and can't just like function, do daily things. So like playing elite sport at the highest level, it's got to be completely debilitating. So yeah.
For sure. Now we've got another tennis story, and that this took me by surprise. Simona Halep, has been on the tour for a long time, very experienced player. But during the French Open, she spoke openly about experiencing a panic attack. That it just surprised me that she would in the first place, but why should it surprise me? I mean, it surprised me because she's so experienced, and you have to wonder if she's experienced that before, if that's hampered her in her game.
Yeah, it is. I think she said in the quotes that when she was asked what happened, she said a little panic attack, let's say, and then she said it's new and I didn't know how to handle it. So it was tough to breathe. I was not very clear on what I'm doing. It was a difficult moment. So it sounds like something that hasn't come up in her career at all. And that was kind of, obviously she didn't really know how to handle it properly in that, or, what to do in that situation. But yeah, very, very experienced player. It's again interesting that she said as well that she came close to retiring from tennis last year because of struggling with a calf injury and then the impact of the pandemic as well. So, maybe that it's just been a very, very stressful past 2 years for her. To come so close to retiring shows that, it was obviously been really tough. So maybe that is kind of mentally taking its toll while she's on the court now. So yeah, hopefully she kind of, she's such a great player. So hopefully she can, I suppose, if, come up with, if that does happen again, that she now it's happened, she can come up with coping mechanisms to deal with it if it happens in a match again.
Yeah, fine. Hopefully she has the team behind her to help her. And how do you say, you develop some kind of coping mechanism, don't you, with those kind of problems? But yeah, awful that it would happen at a Grand Slam, during a competition at that level. Right. One more tennis story before we move on to something completely different. And this is good news for GB. Great Britain is hosting the Billie Jean King Cup. Yeah,
it is. It's very exciting news. So, the previously known as the Fed Cup, but I think it was rebranded last year or the year before. 12-team tournament, and Britain will be hosting, so it'll be in Glasgow in November. And because of that as well, Britain now automatically qualifies. So they weren't going to play at the tournament because they lost the qualifying playoff, but now that they're hosts, they do go through. That should be really exciting. I think it's always a bit of quite a fun tournament, with kind of all these players representing their countries. It's like the World Cup of tennis, I suppose. And it's a pretty good time for women's tennis in Britain. I suppose it's been such a quiet, there hasn't been too many names, and Raducanu's kind of come through and won the US Open, so having a player like her. But then there's people like Harriet Dart, who I think it was Indian Wells, she had a pretty decent run, there's a few other kind of really talented British female tennis players who maybe don't get as much of the limelight. So it'd be exciting to see how they get on, but also just Britain hosting it in general. I think that'd be a cool event to have happening.
Yeah, because we don't have the Whiteman Cup anymore because the US dominated that so much that it really became a one-sided competition.
I don't actually know what that is.
Ah, there you go, you see.
I'll do a Google and find out.
I know you will. All right, well, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, we've got a few football stories and ice skating and then gymnastics, so don't go away. Well, Nancy, we covered the Larry Nassar story in gymnastics, the abuse cases that ended up in court, ended up with him being jailed pretty much for life. But we know that there was some inefficiency when it came to the FBI and their handling of this case. And now I see today in the New York Times that 90 of these women, the gymnasts, are planning to sue the FBI in its failure to investigate Larry Nassar.
Yeah, so they're suing them for $1 billion, which is obviously a lot. So that's £800 million. And like you say, they're because of the mishandling of the case. So the claimants, which includes a lot of the kind of the US's greatest gymnastics talents, so Simone Biles, Ali Raisman, Michaela Maroney, all Olympic gold medalists. They say the FBI mishandled the credible complaints of sexual assault, which we know because there was that report from the US Justice Department Office of the Inspector General last year, who said there was missteps and cover-ups by FBI agents, which allowed Nassar's abuse to continue for more than a year after the case was first opened in 2015. So it sounds like the gymnasts or the claimants have quite solid ground on which to sue the FBI. I think that that whole case kind of came to a bit of a close last year, but I think it is important that they are doing this and that it's kind of continuing to go on, because these kind of actions, holding people or organizations like the FBI to account, make sure that if there's a similar situation in the future, hopefully they'll be a bit more reactive to it and won't kind of, do what happened with the Larry Nassar case, which allowed abuse to continue.
Yeah, hopefully. We'll follow that story and let you know how that unfolds. I want to just turn to a story that you picked up out of the BBC, from the BBC this morning, about ice skating's minimum age has been raised. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so this is all kind of has happened after Kamila Valieva, the Russian ice skater at the Beijing Olympics in February, and it was February and March. So just a quick recap of that story. She's a 15-year-old at the time. She was provisionally banned while in Beijing for a failed drugs test. Then that was overturned. So she then competed, and she was really like visibly like shaken and upset when she was competing. And yeah, she won. She didn't medal at all. Because of the stumbles, she had been at first place, and then she dropped. She was first place before this all came out. It all came out. She competed, was very visibly shaken, and she dropped out of the medals and finished fourth. And I think just, there's a whole separate conversation about the doping side of it and all of that. But then there was another conversation about the fact she was essentially 15 and she was clearly not being treated very well by the coaches at all. That was obvious in the arena at the time. And just the fact that a kind of teenage girl was going through this on a very public stage. So that kind of led to a conversation taking place about raising the minimum age for athletes in senior ice skating events. So it had been 15, and the International Skating Union have now raised that to 17 years old to protect the physical, mental health and emotional well-being of the skaters. So yeah, kind of just the domino effect essentially from that Valieva case at the Beijing Olympics, which, the whole thing was just kind of very, it was a very kind of sad and it wasn't a positive story to come out of the games at all. And while that doping case is still yet to be resolved, so that's still kind of going through, all the relevant bodies, and will eventually probably end up in CAS again. The ISU have now raised the minimum age to 17.
Yeah, that was extremely traumatic for her, wasn't it? In front of the whole world, what she went through.
Yeah, and I think people thought that after that had all happened, that she should have just not competed. Essentially, like she clearly when she was on the ice was not in a good mental state to be competing. And yeah, I think just the reaction from the coaches and stuff like that, it was clear that she wasn't in a supportive environment. People weren't looking out for her. It's probably how she ended up in that situation in the first place. So yeah, I think it's definitely a good move by the ISU and will definitely protect kind of younger athletes.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a good thing, but it's over time, isn't it? I think they're moving it up to 16 for the next season, and then in 2004, 2005, then moving it up to 17 years old. So, yeah, a good move in my opinion. All right, some football stories. Now, I don't know where to start, but what came out of this morning was news from Orlando Pride that Amanda Kroll and Sam Greene have been placed on administrative leave. This is not a good story for Orlando Pride. They've gone through all kinds of controversial issues in recent times, so they don't need this. But tell us more about it, Nancy.
Yeah, so like you said, it's not a good story for Orlando Pride, but just the NWSL in general. Like we've had so much of this in the past year. So yeah, Amanda Cromwell, the Orlando Pride head coach, and first assistant coach Sam Greene have been placed on temporary administrative leave, pending the results of a current investigation. So it doesn't say necessarily why they're being investigated, but it's by the NWSL and the NWSL Players Association Joint Investigative Team. And yeah, it is quite vague. It's no final determinations or conclusions have been reached. But I mean, like I said, we've had a lot of this in the NWSL it was last season, really. I think it was almost every team had some kind of investigation going on, and a lot of coaches and stuff found guilty of misconduct. That's not to say that is what's happened here, but that kind of investigation, I think, suggests it's something like that. So yeah, I think it's kind of just waiting to see what the outcome of this is. And I suppose, yeah, just quite dispiriting that these kind of issues are still happening.
Yeah, it certainly is. All right, next story is about the WSL, the Women's Soccer League in the UK, and your increase in TV viewing, which is very impressive. This bodes well. Yeah, and this is definitely more of a positive story, but yeah, so the Women's Super League viewing hours have had a near fourfold increase from last season. So
in total, fans tuned in for 34.048 million viewing hours, up from 8.83 million from 2020 to 2021, so last season, which is absolutely massive. It really is big.
140% rise in viewership. In the first part of 2022, and we haven't got to the Euros yet.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, that's massively helped by the new TV deal. So games are now shown free to air on the BBC. There's also games on Sky as well. So Sky here is like the main channel where people watch men's football. So normally if you're watching Sky, there's a women's match straight after. So people obviously just sticking around and watching that. So it just shows having these women's games on TV, people are willing to watch them. That just shows by the absolute massive increase in viewership. And yeah, I think that the study found that there was 113% increase in coverage hours. So, you know, if you increase the coverage, people will watch, essentially. And like you said, there's a very good point about we haven't even got to the Euros yet, which is again going to be on free to air TV. And there's nothing else, like there's no other football tournament happening this summer. So people are very likely going to start watching it. So, yeah, it's a very exciting time, I think, for women's football over here.
Yeah, it certainly is. And it's a bit too lively for the Canadian women's soccer team right now. There's echoes here of the US team. But the Canadian women's national soccer team are voicing their concern over equal pay. How new is this story, Nancy? Is this just dropped?
Well, this is kind of come from, I don't know if you saw, but on Sunday, the Canadian men's team, they refused to play a friendly match against Panama. So they essentially went on strike because of a contract dispute between the players and Canada Soccer, the national governing body. So, yeah, the match was cancelled, and then the Canadian men's team released a statement saying that kind of listing all the things they wanted. So because they've qualified for the Men's World Cup, I think for the second time in Canada's history or something like that, they want to ensure they're getting adequate prize money. So they've, in their statement, they've asked for 40% of the prize money from the World Cup. Then they also asked for an equitable compensation structure for the men and women's teams, so they both get 40% of the prize money, and the development of a women's domestic league. So I think at first glance that sounds good. Like people, you know, they've thought about the women's team and they essentially they're asking for the same amount of money. But then the Canadian women's team responded and said that although they were kind of happy with the men mentioning them, they didn't view as what they'd asked for as equal pay because of the differences in prize money for the men and the Women's World Cup. So 40% prize money of the Men's World Cup is so much higher than 40% of prize money from the Women's World Cup. Like that's not equal pay. That's just relative to the amount of prize money that is on offer at men and women's tournaments. So the women's team said they wouldn't accept an agreement that doesn't offer equal pay. And I think almost sided with Canada Soccer. They said that Canada Soccer had suggested something that was actually much more aligned to equal pay. So yeah, everyone's a bit at odds there. And I think people initially saw the statement from Canada, the men's players, and thought, oh, this is great. Like they're mentioning the women's team. But then when you actually think about it, it's not really of benefit to the women's team, and they're kind of on a different wavelength as well. So yeah, a very interesting dispute, something to keep an eye on. And again, quite similar to the US, I imagine they're looking over the border at the US and thinking, in the US, they're pooling the money like 50-50. They're splitting it. And I think Canada women also have the benefit of being more successful than the men's team. So like I said, the men have only qualified for the World Cup for the second time. While Canada are, constant presence at the Women's World Cup, and they are the current Olympic champions as well. So they are more successful. So yeah, just quite an interesting situation over there.
Yeah, it certainly is. Makes a change for them to be making the headlines. Well, our final story this week is of one of my favourite young soccer players, a 22-year-old. I'm gonna read out her full name because I'd never come across this before. 22-year-old Catarina Melonia Macario. She's a Brazilian-born American professional soccer player. Plays as midfield for Lyon in the French division, feminine number 1. She represents the US internationally, and she was a decorated collegiate player in the US. But she really has made her mark already. She's only 22, but she's had an injury, an ACL injury, Nancy. She's going to knock her sideways for a few months. Such a sad story. I mean, I really feel for her because she's just so talented and yet so young.
Yeah, it is. She. Anyone that watched the Women's Champions League final a few weeks ago would know how talented she is. She's one of the goal scorers for Lyon in that, actually. And yeah, just very disappointing. An ACL injury is always a massive blow because of the amount of time that you're out for and the way it impacts. I suppose, you really have to kind of push to come back and be playing at the same level. So yeah, a massive blow for her at quite a crucial time in her career. I think maybe the only positive is that the US don't have a major tournament this summer and that she should be back in time for the World Cup next year. That is probably the only positive. But hopefully she will be back soon and better than ever because, yeah, it's a big loss from women's football.
It certainly is, and as we all know, if you do play sports of any sort, soft tissue injuries inevitably take longer than a broken bone, and they can be really pesky. So we wish her the very, very best of luck, and look forward to seeing her back on the pitch. As you say, stronger than ever, and I hope she enjoys the break and exercises patience, because that's the toughest part, isn't it? When you have an injury, you know yourself, Nancy. It's just being patient and giving it the time that it needs to fully recover, rehab, and come back stronger. And not short. You can't shortcut that because you risk re-injury.
Yeah, that it is so crucial. Even though it seems frustrating, you have to give it the proper attention it deserves. Otherwise, like you said, you can come back and then just be kind of in a constant cycle of injury. So even though you do hope she is back soon, at the same time, you want her to be away for the adequate amount of time for her to recover properly. And when she comes back to be fully fit and not have a recurring injury.
Yeah, for sure. Now, I know you took a week off after your, I would say, big hike over the mountains that was meant to be a bit of a race. It turned out to be a different test to what you're used to. But you're back in training now and looking at a marathon in the future. So how's that? How's the body feeling?
Yeah, okay. I went for a run today and I did feel a bit tired and stuff, and it's getting warm now over here. So I think my body's just accustomed, like reacclimatizing to running in summer. But yeah, no, I'm still running and stuff. So I haven't quite planned what the next big run event is, but I'm sure I'll sort something out soon and then have something to train towards. Yeah,
I bet you will, because you've got the bug, haven't you now?
Yeah, definitely. I definitely am a big fan of running events, and it keeps you motivated, doesn't it? So
it does. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm doing the same, with my cycling. I'm back to training every day, and really, really sort of motivated. Really enjoy the feeling that it gives you when you get to a certain level of fitness, right? And the fitness and the lung capacity, as well as the strengths that. When I do hills now and I'm not changing down as many gears, I'm not going down into what they call the granny gear.
No, never.
Never. No, damn that. But it does give you a really good feeling of that increased fitness. So, yeah, looking forward to later in this year doing another big ride. So I'll keep you posted. But, it really does motivate you. And are you playing football still?
Yes, I am. We're having a bit of not a summer break, but we just had a few bank holidays here and stuff. So we've had a month break, but training starts again. I think it's next week. So yeah, back playing next week. So yeah, doing all sorts at the moment.
Where do you play on the field? What's your position?
I don't know, because after coming back from injury, I was kind of like, I'm happy to go anywhere. I don't like playing in defence or goal, obviously. So anywhere in midfield or up front, that suits me.
Okay. We should mention, since we've got you here, and I know a lot of our American audience pay attention to this too, is that you had a big party this past few days for the Queen's Jubilee celebrations, and it was incredible seeing the crowds that down the mall outside Buckingham Palace. The support that she still has, Nancy, is extraordinary, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. To be fair, I didn't, because I was up in Leeds, so I kind of missed London for the Jubilee weekend. But yeah, I heard it was pretty busy for all around, definitely in Central and stuff. There were a lot of people about.
Yeah, but it ran for 4 days. So did you miss the concert and then the street parties? Because I know that they were happening all over the country too, weren't they?
Yeah, I think so. When did I go up to Leeds? I think I went up on, or maybe it was like Friday. I also don't get bank holidays with work, so that's right. Yeah. I was working. I think I was working on Friday at least, anyway. But yeah, no, there was. Yeah, I could see stuff. I saw a bit of it on TV and stuff, but personally, I didn't experience much of it. But it was lovely weather and stuff. So everyone I knew that had the bank holiday had a good time.
Yeah, because I heard that they actually called a new bank holiday for this. So wasn't it Thursday and Friday the bank holiday as well? So you got Thursday, Friday bank holiday, and then Saturday, Sunday being obviously a 4-day weekend essentially.
Yeah. But like I said, because I work bank holidays anyway, so unfortunately I didn't get that. But everyone else got 4 days off, I was happy for them. Slightly jealous.
Well, you went and had some of your own fun as well too, up there for that run. I'm not going to call it a run, because it really wasn't a run, was it?
Yeah, I think it was definitely more of a hike for sure. I'm not sure if I'd be doing that particular event again. Now,
with Wimbledon starting at the end of the month, what else are you looking forward to this month? Is the rest of the month like pretty quiet before we get to Wimbledon, apart from the warm-up tournaments in Nottingham and Birmingham and Eastbourne? What else aside from tennis?
That's it, really. It is really just kind of the little tennis tournaments, Wimbledon at the end, just prepping for the Euros. In terms of other sports, it is really limited. I suppose gearing up to the Commonwealth Games as well, which is at the end of July, start of August. But that's still, nearly 2 months away. So it is very quiet.
It is. Now, what about cricket? Because of course it's cricket season.
It is, but I don't think there's any women's cricket happening. I think the 100 is happening in August. I don't think it really is a very, it's definitely a lull at the moment.
It is the calm before the storm, because the rest of the summer is going to be hot for when it comes to women's sports.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just getting ourselves ready for that.
Remind everybody where to find you, where they can read your stories, Nancy, and how they can find you on social media.
Yeah, so on Twitter, I'm at Nancy_Gillen, and then Instagram at NancyGillen_sport. And then, I write for Give Me Sport Women. So all our stuff is on the website, or if you want to find us on Twitter, it's at Give Me Sport W.
And we are, of course, at WiSP Sports on social media channels. And that's it for this week. From Nancy and from myself, Chris Stafford, we'll be back next week with more stories from around the world of women's sports. So until then, thank you for listening and enjoy your sport.